Good afternoon. So this is our challenge is to keep you awake and to avoid that you are leaving because this is the last session before the closing speech. So I have three panel members. So I introduced myself before. Francisco Garcia Moran, Chief IT Advisor in the Commission. And I have the pleasure and the honor to have here on my left-hand side Kat Drew. And she is a real expert on design with the users, so a real co-creation for design, particularly applying to public services. She gave us a wonderful conference in Medellin when we had the ICA conference, and you are now working for Uscreates. Probably you are the CEO or something. So, and as customers that are like health, well-being organizations, and this UX, so the user experience is your focus. What is particularly important in public services. So. Vasilis was already here, doesn't need in any case any kind of introduction because if you don't know Vasilis, you don't know anybody. So that's basically the statement. And Paul is the third time he's here, so I'm not going to repeat that. And what I'm going to do instead is I had the pleasure to be for 1 year with a fellowship at the University of Berkeley. And I was working on something called co-production, co-creation, or whatever, because nobody knows what is the difference between these two things. And I'm asking myself, I have been asking myself for 2 years, because I have continued doing some research, by the way, with Vasilis as well, and the eGovLab on this area. Is that the future of the public services? And I mean services in a very kind of a broad sense. That might be, how do you do policy? How do you do design? How do you collaborate? How do you evaluate? How do you deliver? And the fact of the matter is this issue of the co-creation, for those who are not familiar with the term, came up very, very long ago by this lady, Elinor Ostrom, who was a Nobel Prize of Economy. She died a couple of years ago, what was really a pity. And she started with this issue of co-creation back in the end of the 70s. And she observed in Chicago that whenever the police was collaborating with the neighborhood, the petty crime was decreasing. The very moment the police started going into the cars and patrolling around, the crime was increasing. So she created a full theory about the citizen co-collaboration in different areas, particularly was safety, security, social care, and healthcare. So we are, back into the old times in this area, but things have changed. This is the proclamation of the Pope Benedict in 2005. And this is the Pope Francisco in 2013. So things have changed in the meantime. You see that we have become digital. So we have never seen so many platforms and the amount of data is staggering. So we can conclude that, yes, we live in a digital world. That is the setting. So the second thing is I was doing a lot of research on what does co-production mean. And one of the things I observed is that the digital, for many years, was absolutely absent of the definition. So I look at any paper and any summary study trying to go into the concept of co-production, and still today is very evasive. If you ask for a specific case to one of the experts in academy, and I think I have met all of them, they cannot give you 10 criteria to judge whether a service is in co-production or not. And this is one of the topics we are going to study. But I came up with my definition that is involving, so on one side, the government, because they are absolutely essential. It's about public services. But there are many players on the market. We have been speaking today about citizens. But to be honest, we are competing with very powerful competitors. We have the Netflix, we have the cities, we have the Real Madrid, we have Barcelona, we have many things. So a lot of interaction of the citizens with the government in this kind of co-creation is through the civil society. And the development of the civil society is absolutely essential in order to be able to really participate, to convey our ideas, because we have less and less time. We are working more, longer and longer. So citizens individually are going to contribute very partially. So the thing is, we have a new kind of actor that I discovered in the States, and it's powerful because apparently they are moving around $3 billion per year. The civic startup, the social enterprises, or the civic tech, as they call it. And they had to be taken into account into the equation. And the secret for the co-production is something was one of my conclusions of my study after 9 months over there, with a very powerful civil society in the States, because they are really powerful and they really participate, particularly at local level, not very much at state or federal level, is that the secret is in the ecosystem. And being in the Silicon Valley, I was not surprised, because it's the ecosystem of the Silicon Valley what has made the Silicon Valley to be what it is today. So we can apply that to that. We have there, Vasilis was mentioning that 2 years old are already going to the internet. Well, we have the millennials over here that are going to run, and some of you are millennials that are going to run this society. And they are in a binary state. Either they are connected or they are sleeping. So that's the thing. But apart from that, they are already prosumers. They are producing and consuming content, and they are used to that. But we are not using them. This is the fact of the matter. So they are in all the platforms. So we take the risk that they are going to create a parallel world, or the world 3.0. And they are going to live a parallel life and simply ignore democracy. And that is very dangerous. So on our part, we basically today have the government as a vending machine. We put the coins that are the taxes, and then when it's not working, we go there and complain, nobody cares. And then we are going to see each other in 4 years or 5 years when we have elections, and then we are going to see whether I can do something for you, and then I'm going to forget. So this is coming back to the trust we spoke this morning. But there are many people who want to take control of their life with the help of the government, but give me some possibilities to tell you and to do what I really need. And it is particularly important in social care and healthcare. So, for the panel, I have a number of issues I wanted you to deal with. Number one, what are the barriers for this co-creation, co-production? Second one, what are the levers? So what is favoring? Is technology favoring, or is just neutral? Third thing is, how do we get engagement? How do we produce what the people in Iceland did, creating a constitution? So this is a clear example of engagement. How do we get there? Fourth thing is, how can influence the way the government and the politicians and the society is working? Where are the results? How do we create impact? And finally, how we make all that sustainable, because many of the initiatives, that's my conclusion, they die as soon as those who initiated disappear. And what I observe is that we are not reinventing the wheel. We shouldn't, because the private sector is doing that. So what kind of lessons we can learn from the public sector, because they are using that very much and being very successful. And that is for you. So I give you the floor one by one, and then we start the conversations.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kat. I am going to speak today from two perspectives. So I've just started a service design agency called Uscreates, and I started on Monday, and prior to that I've been working in the Policy Lab in the UK government. And for people who don't know what the Policy Lab is, we're a small team. We were set up in 2014, and our aim was to bring data, design and digital techniques to make policy better. And we sit in the heart of government and Cabinet Office. I'm actually going to describe very briefly a project that we did together, so Policy Lab and Uscreates, and that's going to really help me, because then I don't have to think about which we I'm talking about, so I can just be both people. The other thing quickly though, just to say, is that I was also working on data ethics. So I worked with Steve to do a good piece of co-production, actually, involving lots and lots of members of the public to create an ethical framework for data science in government, which I think is the world's first government ethics data framework. So, the project that I'm going to kind of ground my comments around is a project we did with the Department for Health and the Department for Work and Pension. And in the UK, there's 2.5 million people who are on health-related benefits, and that costs £15 billion a year. And we know that 3 times more people flow onto benefits each month than flow off. So our question was, how can we support people to manage their health and stay in work? And so we went through a kind of a design process. We started by looking at the existing evidence and then filling our knowledge gaps. And we did that by using data science, not on a particularly new data set. It was an existing survey, but combining that with ethnography. And I think that's a kind of that triangulation of data and more human qualitative work is interesting and something that was touched on earlier. So we did that, and that gave us a really rich understanding of what was happening. The data science told us the kind of the why at scale, and the ethnography told us, what was happening at scale, and the ethnography gave us some really good explanations of why things were happening. We also involved stakeholders from the outset. So normally government would go out to stakeholders at a point where it thought it knew what the answer was. We invited them in on day 2 of the project to help to get them to tell us what they thought the problem was that we needed to try and solve. And we also brought them in at various stages, but definitely after in a co-design process where we invited them in with users, people with health conditions, with GPs, with doctors, with employers. And we spent the whole day looking at the evidence to create ideas, and these ideas formed around a well-in-work service, so a service that you might be able to access when you're still in work, but you would be able to be assigned a coach who would help you plan your way to stay in work. And then we did 3 rounds of prototyping. So prototyping, for those who, most people know, most people know what prototyping is? No? So prototyping is kind of mocking up an idea and testing it out very small scale. So usually in government we talk about pilots and how we are going to have this pilot with a view to rolling it out. So you want your pilot to be successful. Prototyping is a much earlier stage, and actually you're okay with it failing. You kind of want it to fail as long as you learn from it and you can adapt. So we did 3 rounds of that. We did kind of paper prototyping, very analog. We got local job centres to test out some of the ideas, and finally we made a digital version, which we again tested. So that was our project in a nutshell. But I think that some of the key benefits from that are that we, through this process, through this co-design process, we created a service which reflected what people really needed rather than what we thought they needed. So our assumptions at the beginning of the project were very much around we need to give them support to have benefits or find another job. And actually through prototyping it, what was really apparent is what they needed is confidence and help with planning. And so these are kind of a different way of actually providing a government service. So thinking about digital public service, we can't just digitise at the previous analogue services. A co-design process helps us reimagine what those services need to be in the first place. It also helped us spot errors early and therefore avoid costly waste. So through, again, the prototyping process, we found that the best way to get people to find out about this service was in GP centres. But you had to be quite specific about which doctor, which day of the week. There's no point in doing it on Wednesday mornings when there's mother and baby classes, because those people are not going to be needing to or they're out of work for a different reason for a brief period. So testing something very small helps us save money. And the other thing about sustainability is it really empowered the frontline staff. So in the areas we were working in East London, in Penzance, in Southend, out in Essex, in east of England, it was amazing to see the impact we had on the frontline staff who we said, just try this out, do something differently for a month. And they were so enthusiastic about it that actually they're still doing it. We haven't announced this as a government policy yet, but they're just getting on and doing it. And they are also able, through this process, to be able to respond quickly to other problems that are coming up. So that's really key. Some of the challenges then is the point about what on earth is co-design insight? Is that evidence? But you've only involved 30 people. How on earth can we make a government policy based on 30 people? And for policy making, that's really important. And I think that's why it also speaks to using social media data, because data can give you the big what, it can give you the big numbers, and then co-design can really explain why things happen. And actually, social media is really interesting as a piece of data because it gives you the scale, but it also does give you some of the more qualitative opinions as well. Co-design is not just about designing for user need. So they are users, citizens, they're one set of that's one set of need, but we also have to align that to political opportunities and priorities, and also delivery practicalities. We came up with this amazing Well in Work service, but we just don't have the money to just create new services here and there. So we had to be pragmatic about what are the elements of that service that we can deliver given what we've got already. It also requires systems change. So it's not just about creating an interface between the user and the service. That requires a change in HR, in procurement. So therefore, it's not just co-producing with your user, it's co-producing with ministers, with different parts of the backstage organisation. So just wanted to leave you with an opportunity then. Oh, no, two things. Sorry. So I think that there's an opportunity, though, around using co-design with data-heavy services, which is data on its own is useful, but it needs to be designed. So you need to co-produce almost the way that the data is generated. How do you let people know you're using the data? Have you got their consent for it? How are they giving it in a way that actually nudges their behaviour? Equally, at the other end of the data analysis, when the data pops out or the insight pops out the other end, you also need to design how people are going to use it, how people are going to interpret it. So those I think you need to co-produce data projects. The final challenge, though, which picks up on the Icelandic point earlier, is a lot of people are worried about doing co-design because of what it might suggest. So it might not suggest something that's in line with government policy. So that's why this triangulation between politics, delivery and users is really important. But also managing expectation is absolutely vital. And this is a thing that I've been listening to throughout the day, and even at lunchtime. That's something else entirely, is that you need to give people the parameters by which they are going to engage in your process. If they're giving their time to come and co-produce something with you, they have to have some expectation that something will happen differently as a result of it, and also the limits of what that can be. Thank you.
There is a very specific question to you. Okay. That is, did the Policy Lab collaborated with the Behavioral Science Unit? We did a little bit on that project. We worked with them. One of the ideas that came out is when people are giving information to apply for the benefits, how can they give information that is not just saying what they can't do, how ill they are, but also saying what they can do, what their aspirations were, and that was with behavioural insights. And that's really interesting to thinking about how you design that data interaction, how you can also use it to flip someone's mentality about the possibilities of getting back to work. I think speaking about one specific department that whose name might be Behavioral Science Unit.
Yes, so yeah.
Okay, good. Mm-hmm. Paul.
Okay, well, thank you,
right.
Kat, actually, for that introduction to the stuff that you've done on co-production, because I'm sat here, as I've said earlier as well, really sitting from the technology position in all this, and not really being, well, I would say not being part of the co-production, co-creation space, which is interesting because your final three things that you identified as being involved didn't involve the technology. Which, yes, is quite interesting because it reflects the experience that we have had in working our way through this project, through the Sense4us project particularly, because a lot of the advances that we've made in understanding of what we're trying to do with the technology that's coming together, not what the technology is, we know that, but the question is really about not just what we can do with the technology. Let's face it, technologists and researchers know exactly why they're doing what they're going to do, and nobody else really understands them, and they find it very difficult to explain. And at the end of the day, actually, they're probably wrong, because they're probably wrong in the sense not that the research and the technology development they're doing doesn't have an application. It's not the application that they think is heading towards. And fortunately, that's not the case for Sense4us. But the reason it's not is because we were fortunate enough in this project to be working with colleagues from Hansard Society, from GASIS in Germany, from GovTU in Athens, and people at the eGovLab in Stockholm, people who were working with folks on the ground who actually kind of felt that there must be something they can do with the technology. They didn't really know what it was. They didn't quite know what the technology would do, and they didn't quite know how it was doing it. And on the other hand, we didn't really know what it was they wanted to do and how best to present the technology to them to do it. So probably over the last year or so of the project, a lot of our work has not been about developing technology per se. It's been about trying to work out how to use and present that technology in a way that's going to do a useful job. And I think it does come down as well to a lot of what you've been saying, Kat, because the kind of barriers that we would have worried about were essentially technical ones. How are we going to manage this many million tweets, and how are we going to process it in finite time so people can get the answers and whatever. But actually the questions that we needed to be asking as well was, how can we develop interfaces, presentations, visualizations, and analyses of data that we've collected and whatever else, which is going to be useful to the people who want to use it and who want to get some benefit out of it. Which is not to say, I think, that the people who are our users come along and they know exactly what they want from day one. They don't. That's nothing wrong. That's exactly how it is, because they don't know what it is that the technology is they're able to do either. So there's this great coming together that happens, and it takes time, because you talk different languages, you've got different mindsets, different perspectives, and you come in with a whole different set of your own hang-ups, right? You're all coming at it from different directions, and you might come in thinking what you need is personalization, and you might say, no, I don't think I do. And actually that is part of the co-creation process, is where you sit down and you say, well, actually there's stuff you can do using personalization techniques. Take an example, and it's something that I wasn't getting out of what you were saying, interestingly, that says, yeah, you've got statistics, you can do statistical analysis, you're dealing with individuals, and technology gives you the opportunity to treat those individuals as individuals, not as point something percent of a large corpus. But until you've had that discussion and the debate, you don't know to what extent that's of any use to support what the people, the users, the stakeholders are actually trying to do. So trying as well, Peggy, to work through your issues that you raised and you want us to talk through, that yes, there are barriers, and there are barriers of language and barriers of understanding. absolutely, for sure. And those are the ones that you can only get across if you have bridge functions between the technologists who understand the nuts and bolts and the algorithms and the end users who don't understand that at all. So there's a gap, and getting across those barriers is really key. And I guess the challenges are actually the same as the barriers. It's how do you do that, and how do you share that? So this question about engagement, one thing flows through to another, and this is part of the engagement, and this is towards the end of our project, of this particular phase of it, engaging with people, real people who are saying that there's some technology here, there's stuff going on, I want to know what's happening, I want to know what I can do with it. And so these kind of mixed groups, which is gloves off. It's got to be in a sort of open environment where you aren't trying to just say what the other parties want to hear. You're being really honest about what's going on, and what each of you wants, what each of you can do, because that's the only real way to actually move forward and get something that's going to be useful. So, creating impact is then where do you go from there? How do you keep that momentum? How do you keep it going and make it sustainable? How can you take that understanding? You talk about prototyping, and I think that was a really good example of the guys in Southend, I think so it was, who they tried it. They said, actually, this is really quite useful. They may well have said, I didn't think it was going to be, but really this is quite useful. And they carry on doing it. It's what I like to call the sort of post-it phenomenon, where you give people post-its and they find they can't do without it, and then you've built a business, or as Steve calls it, the drug dealer phenomenon, but that's the different way of looking at it, for you get them hooked. So it's creating that thirst for the outcome to actually deliver and to move forwards, and that's where the sustainability really comes from. And you made one final point, which was about the private sector. The private sector have often different motivations. They are the private sector, they are trying to stay in business. And a lot of what we're talking about when we're talking about government and social support, wherever that is that I think it should not be seen as a business, because the beneficiaries are people, their lives are better. I'm not somebody who would ever want to try to say that's worth X pounds, X thousand euros or anything else. So yes, the private sector, when we talk about the Googles and the Facebooks and so on, are developing technology. Yes, we track that. Yes, we use that. And we should do. We shouldn't ignore it. We can't reinvent any of that technology. But for sure, what we're trying to do with it is very much more in the social space.
No, just to precise, my question concerning the private sector is they are using a number of approaches and techniques, and one of the things I did being at Berkeley is to compare what we are using in general in government and the possibilities, and I compared, and it was basically, a full correspondence. So I think that we had the tools, but we are not using in the same way, even for a different purpose. I didn't mean that we should approach co-creation in order to make money, but it's in terms of the approach and technologies, because they have been pretty good at that. Absolutely
right. Yes, the drivers are different, but the technologies are ones that can and should be used. Yeah.
Good. Vasily, we know each other.
In my view, I think that the private sector is also part of this ecosystem, and I think they need to be involved. And I will just give you some examples as we move forward. When we started eGovLab about 6 years ago, the Swedish government were part of the Swedish public sector. And the Swedish government came over and they said, we would like you to work on some societal challenges. Lab. One of them is having a child. Another one is getting a job, and another one is building a house. So we took this as an initial step, and we said, okay, now where do we go from here? It's okay, it's a societal challenge. So we started gathering, and this was so everything that we do in terms of co-creation is based now on societal challenges that often come from government, other times they come from the private sector, other times they come from the citizens and civil society. But all of this is part of the government customers. So we have to look. So we are looking now at public service delivery based on the market demand rather than the traditional supply model that the public sector has been using. So how do we co-create from that? We sat down and we developed a 6-step process, which one of them, of course, is the identification of the challenge. So we identify the challenge, and then we have some researchers do a lot of work, so they get very familiar with that particular challenge that we're dealing with. Then we find out what is the ecosystem within that. For example, building a house. Who is involved? I mean, other than the land registry, the Lantmäteriet, as they call it in Sweden, and also banking and the financial sector. Different types of public services like water, electricity, public schools. Are there any grocery stores close by where you want to build a house? And everything else. So we put everything together, including citizens, which are our consumers, our customers, from a governmental standpoint. And we try to come up with sort of a holistic approach of solving that societal challenge. So when they are all together, we have different types of consultations. So this is what we call the not the triple helix model, it's the quadruple helix model, because we also involve the research community in there as well. And we see what is out there, what is happening. Then we hold what we call the open innovation jam sessions. So what we do is we have this big space and everybody gets together and we separate in groups all of the, I hate to call them stakeholders, but since I am a carnivore, so okay, I can be a stakeholder very easily. So we bring everybody together in this room and we sort of play different roles. So there are all kinds of toys we have at the lab, and they're fun games. So it's interesting to see actually policymakers that they have never been involved in that process, playing with little dolls and writing things and sticking them in different places. You know, so they sort of create it creates an environment that is very enriching intellectually at the end. And within that, it's not about technology, even though whatever comes out may have a technological solution. We have in there psychologists, we have cultural anthropologists, we have on the privacy and data issues, legal from the Faculty of Law, we bring people over. We have coaches. Sometimes we need psychiatrists, but that's okay. But it's just a fun process and we just record everything. Then after that, regardless of what we have to do, it needs to pick up some kind of a political drive. And in fact, what we would want is a political mandate for something like this. So we sit down and we create a movie. Okay, so we go up to production upstairs and we create a little movie about, with real people, actually real people that they want to go and buy a house. And they have an iPhone, which comes out of the open innovation jam sessions, as we call them. And they look at this lot. And then within this lot, what you may have is the type of home you can build. It can be up to a 2-story, for example. And then architects have come in and they have designed different homes. So they can actually go and flip the different homes. And by that time, you choose an architectural firm. And then you have builders. And then you have the banking system. And if it's okay, then the registry can say, okay, you can buy this house. So how do you take all of these different actors in your life as a citizen and put them together in one click? And you say, okay, I want to buy this house. And then you get the architect, you get the builder, the banking system, I mean, they already know your finance, and then it's done. This is what government should be looking at. Often, the private sector can drive this, okay? I will go through the step process, and then I will talk to you about one of the companies that came out from all of this process, which is interesting and very relevant because it deals with immigration. Then after the concept visualization and everything else, and you get a political buy-in, then what we do is we have a test bed. So we prepare the test bed, we get all the agencies that are involved, we get the private sector, and we have them open up their data. And then we invite civic techs, or whoever wants to be invited, civil society, whoever, and they develop something on all of this based on this active participation of all of the actors, okay, of all of the actors, which is actually a shift from a beneficiary to a player throughout the whole game from all of this. And then we sit down and they develop some stuff. We may have hacks, we may have whatever, but something comes out of it. Then from that point on, we take it into a consultation stage. So there's a different room where actually citizens can come in and look at the future of the Swedish government. And they just sit and play with whatever applications we had. And we have even more interaction. We're sitting underneath 6,000 young students that are upstairs, that they're in the area of computer science. So they can come in and actually play and do things with all of that. And then we try from there to prepare it to go to market. So we will create a prototype and a functioning prototype, and then we invite a lot of the accelerators that are there and the incubators to take this on and move it forward. Example, other than the housing and all the other three things, which actually are now on stage 4 within our co-creation process that we have, that methodology we developed. It is a small civic tech. There was an immigrant in Sweden and a businessman. So the immigrant, when he just arrives there as a very young kid, he found himself always translating all of the documents to Arabic, so his family, his mother and father, would be able to go to the bank, go to the doctor, fill out the taxes and everything else. So a civic tech came in and they said, we're going to take the Swedish public services and we're going to translate it in the 5 key languages of the immigrants. So they sat all together and they developed a mobile app for this. So you can actually go and look for a house, go and enroll yourself to learn Swedish. It helps you find a job. It helps you create a job, create a business. So everything that has to do with the public services in Sweden is translated in these 5 languages: Farsi, Arabic, Somali, English, and another one I don't remember. And they're able to do all of this. Now, this did not cost anything to the Swedish taxpayer. But what they do is that anytime that there is an immigrant that is using a service based on this, they charge a nominal fee to the municipality that they're involved in. So there was no capital investment from the public sector, and it is actually paid for by usage from the migrants. There are about 40,000 users on this, and there are 152 municipalities that are involved in this particular project. And now they're extending to Germany, to the UK, and because of the interaction with all of the migrants that they have, because they have now a very special group that is working with them. They're looking at ways to avoid trafficking when they're coming into a lot of the borders from Turkey and so on. So if you have that application, you will see that in Sweden, there are these particular jobs that are available and it will match your skills, so you can actually go towards Sweden or Germany or anywhere else, and not fall a victim of traffickers. So it is actually extending, and all of this application is part of this process of engaging the user and everyone else throughout the cycle, and just keep it going.
Thank you. We have already here a very interesting question. A lot of the examples mentioned so far have been local. Does co-creation work best at local level, or there is a particular national policy areas it fits? If you allow me, I'm going to reply to that based on my experience. Based on my experience as I said, in California, that the best fit is for local, because people tend to be more engaged in local policies, to be closer to the politicians, etc. It's more difficult to find examples at state or national or even European level, but it might exist. But and then there is the issue of policies. So we identify in one of the studies. I got it out, the one with Vasilis on the use of mobile technologies and the Internet of Things. And we identify policies that are particularly adapted to co-production, like certainly social care and health care. There is environment. There is safety and security. There is transportation, and those policies, you don't need a lot of engagement from the people except using the technology they own and opting in. And you can get enormous benefits in terms of all the data you are going to receive and analyze with all the precautions. But that's my answer, perhaps.
So a question about, do these things work best at local or national? I mean, I think in government, we've got lots of national policies that are delivered locally. So, for example, we've just done a project on homelessness. The government is supporting a piece of legislation going through Parliament at the moment to increase prevention. But the way that happens will be delivered by local areas. So we've got a really good opportunity to co-produce those locally, and we have been doing that. But there are some things that happen nationally. So we've just done this is Policy Lab, a project on rail, and there's a national strategy about rail. And what was really interesting there is that through doing some ethnography, so actually spending time with people, actually doing user journeys, proper journeys, travelling around with them, we found that so the data in the survey showed that punctuality, cost and convenience were important, and undoubtedly they are. But it was actually by going around spending time with people, we realised that stress, panic and anxiety were actually also very important, and that has led to the government changing its strategy to create stress-free journeys. So I think that they can happen at different levels. And in Ireland, they crowdsourced a constitution which led to everyone in the country voting for gay marriage, and that happened at a national, that's a national policy.
Paul?
I don't have too much to add to that, because I think it's absolutely true that there are things which may be at a national level, but because they're delivered locally, and it comes back to some of the comments about personalisation, well, that's local to community level, is a really key part of that. But it has to be a continuum from the overarching application that's coming down from government down to it's got to be applicable and usable at local level.
Vasilis?
I like to think of these different types of levels of government. I mean, we need to address the challenge. I mean, what is the challenge that we're addressing? Often they're local, and they can be scaled up to a national. For example, the immigration thing, and then they can scale up to international. So I think that it depends a lot on the challenge that we're trying to address. So it can be at all levels.
Okay.
Can I just come back on the point about segmentation, because you mentioned that a couple of times, and personalisation of public services, and I just wanted to kind of, again, reflect on the project I was talking about, and actually there's an opportunity for using data, social media data, to really segment down different populations and understand that you need to provide a different service for those, and we did that within the health project. But what was also interesting about, I'm really interested in the kind of the intersection between data and design. So we did this wonderful piece of k-means clustering, which meant we could segment these populations down. But in order to present, but the data science, I mean, it was the way that looked was completely unintelligible to anyone apart from the data scientist. So then we had to work with graphic designers to make sense of that data in a way that we could share with our users, our GPs, our employers at our co-design day, so that they could design a solution from it. So anyway, just wanted to make that point.
Yeah.
Anything else to be added? Perhaps we can open up to the audience in case you have questions apart from the ones that came from Slido. No, you are not tired.
Okay, about co-creation. We have seen a number of inspiring examples, but we are trying to apply it on traditional e-government applications, just a transaction to be filled in, and we see there's not a lot of uptake, and we learn a lot by going and talking to the people using it in the way you describe it and trying to correct it. And it's just that simple, which applications are not doing good enough, not like the other ones, and why is that? So you learn a lot by talking to people and seeing what they do on the work floor, what little tricks they use, and how they adapt with your bad application so you can make it better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I had to keep on my own experience in this issue of delivering government services because I have been delivering government services for the last 30 years on the supply side. And the image I have in front of me, now that I have seen the things from the other side of the fence, is like you have your son in front of you, and you have the little pot with the food, and then you say, open up the mouth, you are going to get your service. And then, of course, the kid is crying. So the thing is, one of the things I saw there in the city of Auckland is the Brigade of Code for America that we are hacking for the city and helping a lot because the IT guys, we are so already overloaded just keeping the lights on that we are very happy that some people did some applications in open data. They were organizing with the youngsters some kind of civic testing sessions. And what they did was very simple. So Auckland is not a city that is easy, with many places where petty crimes are in high rate. And basically, they collected the guys telling, okay, you are going to have pizza today for free, and you are going to have some vouchers that you are going to be able to spend in some of the shops because they are contributing, and then we keep you here out of the petty crimes for half a day. And in addition to that, the guys were telling, this is the service you are going to give me? This is a bullshit. So don't do it. I don't understand anything. Why don't you do it this way? And they were obtaining excellent feedback on this area. The second thing that is important here is one of the barriers that there are levers, because I was mentioning that, and something that was constant in my interviews with the undergrads, with the PhDs, with the citizens, with the IT services is there are two things that are very important. Is government as a platform, so open up the interfaces so that you can create added value, and the second thing is open data. These two areas were absolutely essential for them if they wanted really to help governments to deliver better services. And there are barriers. So one of the things that was commented, particularly in the area of civic tech, because you mentioned you develop, etc. But one point in time, that's going to become a service that is going to be provided to the population, and then you hit immediately the procurement rules. So yeah, why am I doing the contract with you? why those big guys are not going to complain, etc. So what they have done in some of the places that are in the state is to reserve a part of the budget in agreement with the controller, so that they use a completely different kind of approach to procurement. They open up a problem without any kind of description. Then they call the incubators and the accelerators and all the civic tech. And then, so try and solve the problem. You are going to be paid for 1 month, all of you. And then the winner will have the contract for 2 years, and then that goes to open procurement later. That's one thing. The second thing, according to the same approach and methodology, they are creating a new program called a Startup in Residence. So they are going to get startup, and they are going to put them into the administration, and they are going to work on a couple of problems. And they are going to be paid for that over a period of time, and then we will see what happens with what you have produced. Probably you open up and you go for a normal kind of call for tender. If you don't solve that, most of the innovation is coming from very, very tiny companies. And all the procurement in general, and I know because I have been signing contract for the last 30 years, is that basically the supplier and the contractor, if it is the government, is trying to cover their ass. Sorry for the expression, but is in case I have the problem, I can go to court and win. That's basically the thing. And I think if we want really innovation in government, and we want people involved, particularly the youngsters, we need to change the way we approach. I don't say that we are going to do that for high-level defense, etc., but there are many areas where there is a room for social innovation that's not going to come, in any case, from big companies going for big contracts. That's my opinion. But I wanted to challenge you on that, on the levers, on the role of procurement, etc. Because I don't receive any questions from the audience, so I have to invent the questions.
I mean, since you mentioned procurement, I mean, in Sweden, data is open by default. There is no, so if another civic tech wants to come in and develop exactly the same program, they can do it and let them compete in the market. So when you're talking about open data, this is what they developed it on. So they went and I mean, all of the Swedish public services are online, one way or another. They are online. So they just took all of this and translated everything into 5 different languages. And what they have done is that they keep targeting on transactions. And they said to the municipalities that it cost an X amount of money for a transaction. For this, the municipalities accepted because it saved them a lot of money from the front desk and people, and there used to be lines, and they would have to hire people. Since only in 1 year we had close to 400,000 new immigrants that came into Sweden, which is proportionately a very large part of the population. So it bottlenecked a lot of the front desks of the Swedish government. And that came as an open breath. But that doesn't mean that any other company cannot do it. And they can go compete with this one.
Any other reaction from you both?
No,
Any other question from the audience? And somebody started telling me that I should stop here because we need to go for the closing session. So thank you very much for your contribution, very useful. And I think we are going to proceed with the closing session. And I wanted to give them a big hand. Thank you.
I'll just stand here because it saves walking over to the lectern. I'd really say thank you to everybody here for making this a really interesting, really useful session. I hope it's been very interesting and useful to everybody here as well. It has been recorded, there's video and there's the audio recording, so hopefully we've captured all of the things, all the incredibly good and valuable discussion that's gone on here. But really, I just want to thank everybody that's been involved in the organisation and putting this together today. It's actually been a pretty full-on task, particularly led from Hansard Society. I noticed Ruth has done a runner while we've been finishing that last one. Thank you very much to Ruth, but also, of course, to her team. Especially Safian has, I only saw about 1/10 of the emails that she's been sending out, and it was a huge flood of emails, and she's really worked hard to do that, along with the other guys and girls from Hansard. Thanks, Brina. Joel's around somewhere. You've and Adam really put together a good show, and thank you very much indeed. And thank you to all my colleagues from Sense4us that have come along and supported, shown that the demonstrations out there. I hope everybody's had a chance to really see that. Gather cards and contacts, and you got the web address so you can look up and keep track. As I say, the project is coming to an end from this phase, but we're looking to see how we can take it forwards and how we can make it sustainable and start really delivering some value to everybody. So if there are things that you've seen here and you want to keep following up and follow up, then do follow up with us, come back, and we'll be very happy to kind of work and exchange, co-create with you to move that forward. So once more, thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you for the time in Brussels, and look forward to seeing it all come to the next stage. So thank you.